The national minimum wage was introduced in the country in 2019 to help reduce poverty and inequality, as well as to promote fair labor practices. All these to protect workers from exploitation. It is currently sitting at 27.58 rand, applicable to all workers, including farm workers and domestic workers. However, employers have been failing to comply with the policy. The National Employers Association of South Africa's CEO Gerard Bavenfus says employers have been struggling to keep up with an uncertain economy, leading to the lack of compliance.
An employer compete in the market with good employees. So if you want to keep a good employees, if you want to retain the services of a good employee, you need to compete with others on the basis of wages. That's how it works. But if that's no longer the issue, if you can't afford to pay whatever the amount is that the minimum wage prescribed, you're not going to pay that amount. Why not? Well, because you can't afford it. It's as simple as that. Money doesn't fall from the air. And so, there's nothing you can do about it. If I can only afford a lesser amount, I will pay a lesser amount. I can't go anywhere as an employer and say, please give me money to pay my employees more. I can't do it.
But been dismissed by Trade Union Federation COSATU. The Federation's Matthew Parks says there's been a blatant disregard to the national minimum wage by some employers, cautioning that it is illegal for employers to pay their employees less than this minimum wage threshold of 27.58 rand per hour.
The Minimum Wage Act itself does provide for exemptions for employers who genuinely cannot afford it. So if a company and employer need to do basically three things. One is they should consult, or they must consult their employees, their unions. They can then apply for an exemption to the Department of Employment and Labour, and they just simply have to provide evidence of their financial difficulties. So it could be the bank statements, the financial statements, and so forth. And if they can prove that yes, indeed, they can't afford it, they will be given an exemption for one financial year for up to 10% of the minimum wage. And about half of the companies who have applied for the exemption have received it. There have been some companies who actually were trying to abuse the system, who just declined in their instance, but half the companies who applied for it received it.
The Federation has made calls for the Department of Employment and Labour to ramp up their inspectors' intake for this year. It is also calling for the naming and shaming of employers, which it says continues to exploit workers. An economist says with a slow economic growth, employers will continue to make adjustments that serve to work against the policy on compliance.
The big problem in South Africa is that the economy has been growing at around 1% per annum for the last decade, while the population growth rate has been about 1.5% per annum. So it means unemployment keeps on increasing. What South Africa really needs is a 3% economic growth rate. And with a 3% economic growth rate, more employment opportunities will be created, and we will be able to get the unemployment problem under control. We've already seen that the employment of domestic workers declined as a result of a national minimum wage because households could simply not afford the national minimum wage for domestic workers.
NIASA has reiterated its rejection of what it calls an imposed national minimum wage, calling for a change in policy direction and for government to rather focus on economic growth and job creation. The study comes as the National Minimum Wage Commission has just published recommendations in the Government Gazette that the national minimum wage be adjusted by the rate of the consumer price inflation plus 1.5% from March 2025. Katlego Legodi, SABC News in Johannesburg.